the line. Meeting call to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Albro,
Present.
Ms. Calderon,
Here.
Mr. DeCosta,
Present.
Ms. Dunn,
Present.
Ms. Coffinger,
Here.
Mr. Luna,
Here.
Ms. Ryan,
Here.
Vice President Gomez,
Here.
President Andrews.
Here. All rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the New Milford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Borough Hall and the New Milford Public Library. Notices have been sent to the Record and the Twin Borough News. The board announces that under its long-standing policy, it will not discuss in public any comments made by members of the public concerning individual staff members. At this time, please be advised that all cell phones and electronic devices are to be turned off. Meetings of the board are open to the public, and all members of the community should feel free to participate. Before coming to the board, the chain of command should be followed. There are two portions of the meeting reserved for comments from the public. The first at the beginning of the meeting for the agenda items only, and the second at the end of the meeting for other items. Issues raised by the public may or may not be responded to by the board, but all comments will be considered. The board requests that all members of the public be mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Due to confidentiality and legal rights afforded by the state of New Jersey, members of the public are asked to not speak negatively or in a derogatory manner about any employee of the board or any student. May I get a motion to open to the public for items on the agenda? Motion by Nicole Dunn, seconded by Cheryl Calderon. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? As outlined in the Milford Board of Education Bylaw 0167, each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 2 minutes. No? Okay. Can I get a motion to close to the public? Motion by Paige, oh, somebody has their hand up. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Michelle Farrier. I live at 860 Berkeley Street. One of the, myself and stand up.
Whatever you're comfortable with, it's okay.
My son has been having tutoring sessions at Berkeley School, and he's been doing it during aftercare, and it's still in school grounds. And I went through the right channels. I asked the after-school director and the principal, and it took me a week for everybody to get to be aware and to ask permission and for the tutor to be comfortable. And then we received the news that it's not allowed, tutoring is not allowed in school grounds anymore. And I was just wondering, why is tutoring not allowed in school grounds? And if this is every school or just Berkeley?
Okay. Thank you.
The only reason why I'm raising this issue is because I'm a single mom and I work 9 to 5. And the tutor was very nice for her to offer to do this. And even though I paid her on the side, she has helped Zachary so much. Zachary wasn't really getting reading or math, and his confidence level has raised. His math, because of the tutor, his math assessment, he got an 81, and that's pretty big for his whole assessment from like what he has learned. And it's not really convenient at this time because the project reading review is coming up, and he has to know all of these things. So now he can't practice all of this. And it's really disappointing. So I have to change, even though the pandemic has taught us to change our whole schedule and to work on Plan B, it's just not very convenient for single parents like me, or maybe parents too, like parents that work that have 2 jobs or something. So I was just wondering why tutoring is not allowed on school grounds anymore. What happens to high school students or middle school students that need extra help? Are they not allowed either to stay after school?
Okay, thank you very much.
Could you just state your name for me again?
Michelle Farrier, Ferreira.
I'm going to follow up with you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Are there any other questions or comments from the public for items on the agenda? Okay. Did we get Paige, you motion to close? Paige Ryan, second by Stephanie Coffinger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? At this point, we have a presentation on benchmarking from Ms. Shayna Ginley, Ms. Patricia Paula Castro, and Lauren Odaxa. Welcome, hello, thank you.
Oh, wait, give me 1 second, because I'm going to give you this. I just want to plug up on here, too.
So ladies, while Lauren is getting set up, could you just introduce yourselves and exactly what you do to the board for those who may not know you? Or the members of the public who may not know you?
So I'm Shayna Ginley, and I'm the K-12 math specialist, so I work in all of our buildings in New Milford.
And I'm Patty Paula Castro, and I'm the elementary vice principal at Gibbs in Berkeley, and I work at both schools and work with teachers, and I had the opportunity to work with Lauren as well. So, it's my first year, so thank you for having me.
Good evening, everyone. Excuse us for a minute, we have a couple devices going just so that we can help you out with some of the numbers. So at our last meeting in January, I had shared out there was a formal presentation on the Start Strong performance results, which, as you know, was administered in September and October, the beginning of the school year, in place of last year's NJSLA, which we typically take each year, but was canceled last spring due to COVID. As a follow-up to the Start Strong data, we wanted to share with you our local benchmark assessment data, which is very meaningful to us because it is a platform that we have used consistently now for a few years, and you probably are familiar with the names of them. In the elementary school in K and 1, we use AimsWeb, and in 3 through high school, we use Lincoln. And we assess the students in both English language arts and math. Okay, so just as a refresher, benchmark assessments help teachers determine student progress on specific topics, standards, and skills. We administer the benchmark assessments 3 times in the school year. In the fall, we administer the assessment to take a baseline, and then again in the winter to monitor growth, and then at the end of the school year to measure end-of-year expectations of the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. The benchmark results are valuable to us because they provide immediate results and data for the teachers so that the teachers can provide immediate actionable feedback to their students. As I had said, the measures that we use, or these tools, are aligned to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, and in grades 2 through up through the high school, there's even a New Jersey Student Learning Assessment predictability component. So it allows us to gauge how a student will perform on the state test in the spring. We tried to streamline the data to share with you tonight, just so it's a little bit easier to digest because, it is a lot of numbers that we're looking at. So the performance levels, we have 3 numbers to show you. The bubble meeting and exceeding range, that is the number that will appear in green. These are the students who demonstrate a level of understanding that's expected or mastery of the grade level standards. So they're right where they should be, and they're consistent in their performance. There's a level of accuracy, independency, and independence and quality. The next number that you're going to see is a yellow number, and that's the number that I'm going to help you with because it looks a little bit dull on the screen tonight. But these students we often refer to them as like right on the cusp. They're approaching, they're progressing towards the grade level standards and expectations, and they demonstrate knowledge, skills, and practices, but they may require additional supports and monitoring as they strengthen key skills. And then finally, we have our not meeting or partially meeting population. And these students are still acquiring the prerequisite skills necessary to understand and unpack grade level content. These students do require additional support more regularly and ongoing monitoring as they acquire skills. So as I had said, we administer these benchmarks in both English language arts and mathematics. I'm going to share English language arts to start, beginning with our Ames Web data for kindergarten and first grade. So you see a pyramid. The pyramid on the left for kindergarten was our fall results compared to, on the right, our winter results. And for first grade, the same. The left is from the fall. The right image was from our winter assessment. So what you want to see here, looking at this, is more green and less red. More of those students who are meeting grade level expectations, fewer students who are not meeting. It's a little sticky. Okay, here we go. Okay, so beginning with grade 2. And here's where I'm going to look at my other numbers. So we thought it was important for you to see fall compared to winter. And there are colors in the bar that shows the outcomes of our students, or which performance category they fell into. On the left, you see the numbers are 23%, 40%, 37%. And on the right, it's 26%, 37%, and 37%. Can you see the middle numbers?
No.
Not at all, okay. All right, so if we're thinking back to the performance expectations or those categories that I shared with the colors, we have 37% and 40, so you're looking at maybe 77%. You're looking at the students, 37% of students who are meeting. We have about 40% on that cusp, and 23% who are not meeting or partially meeting grade level expectations at this time. So that's how to interpret it. When I hit this, all of our numbers should show up.
Try the arrow.
I did.
Okay.
That didn't work either.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Temperamental.
Okay, that's grade 3. Mr. Preet, do you have another keyboard, please?
Shut it off, turn it back on. Oh, will that disconnect it?
I don't know.
He has the magic touch.
Really?
Thank you, Mr. Preet.
Thank you. So here you can see 2nd through 5th grade. Again, this is the Linkit assessment. And I'm going to read those numbers for you. Sorry. We have grade 3, it's 19%, 33%, and 48% in the fall. In the winter, 22%, 36%, and 33%. In 4th grade, we have 15%, 39%, 46%. And for grade 4 in the winter, it's 21%, 29%, 50%. And grade 5, 37%, 25%, 43%, 11%, 29%, and 60%. So what we would like to see are the numbers in green increasing from fall to winter, and the numbers in the darkest or orange or red color decreasing. We also administer Linkit in the middle school, 6, 7, and 8. I'm just going to read the numbers in yellow for you. So for grade 6, we have 24% in the fall, 26% in the winter. Grade 7, 17% in the fall, 28% in the winter. And in grade 8, 22% in the fall, 16% in the winter. And English 1 at the high school, 35% in the fall, 27% in the winter. English 2, 28% in the fall, 21% in the winter. English 3, 34% in the fall, 44% in the winter. I just want to reiterate that the number that I read out loud is only for the middle range, that approaching, who were right below meeting the benchmark or the grade level expectation at the time. And what I had said we had typically referred to as on the cusp. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Ginley, who is going to share math for us.
Very good, thank you, Lauren. So here we have our math results for Ames Web. We really like using Ames Web for our kindergarten and first grade students because it tests students on their foundational skills. So we can see what foundational skills they're working on and have that addressed in our small group instruction. So again, as Ms. O'Doxter said, we want to see the green increasing, yellow and red decreasing, which is exactly what we see here.
Bear with me. Shayna. There we
So
go.
here we have the results for our elementary schools. This includes the data from both Berkeley and Gibbs. So one thing that I want to add on to what was mentioned before was that the tests, the topics and skills that are assessed are the same on Form A as Form B and same for Form C. What changes is the expectation. So at the beginning of the year, we wouldn't expect students to know second grade content yet because they're just starting second grade. At the middle of the year, we expect that to increase. So that's what's changing from fall to winter to the spring. So keep that in mind when we're looking at those percentages. This information, I'm not going to read you the numbers. I think we hopefully can see it. Maybe we can share the yellow. This information is great when you look at it this way. Oh, sorry, Lauren, if you don't mind.
You want me to go back?
Yeah. This information is helpful to look at when we look at both schools, but the real work begins when teachers look at their own individual classes. We can see where students grew, and now you can go to the next one. We have our middle school here, and a big thing we look at, especially for teachers, when we're looking at their own specific data, is thinking about what we've taught. Because remember, this is testing things that kids may not have learned just yet. So in winter, we're always looking at what we've taught. Did students grasp what we've taught so far? If they have, great, let's look at what we're doing next and see what prior knowledge they might be bringing to the table. If they haven't, that's where the real work begins and where we're creating a plan to say why hasn't this skill been mastered by each individual student. Then we have our high school data. We've been doing a lot of training with Linkit about how to best, about how to best use this data because it's great to have a lot of information and a lot of data, but it's not super helpful unless you're doing something with it. So we've been having data meetings where the teachers work collaboratively with their team, administration's involved in those meetings as well, and we create a plan. And one of those plans is looking at those questions of topics that we've covered already and use them as an instructional tool. That was actually recommended to us by Linkit. So we're having conversations about the questions. We can also see, based on the data for each individual class and each student, if there's common misconceptions. So if a lot of students are all picking the same incorrect answer, that's really valuable information for our teachers to have so that they can kind of create a path forward with their students. Would you like me to read the yellow? Or they all should equal 100. So I don't know if you want to do a little mental math.
I think what I'll do, if it's okay with you, can we share this
Absolutely.
presentation?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
that would probably be easier.
Yeah, well, you can put it on the website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And one important thing that Ms. Ginley did mention is the question of whether we've taught it or not. So particularly in math, our elementary math program is spiraling. So concepts are introduced, not expected to be mastered at the point that they are introduced, but revisited multiple times throughout the course of the year. So depending on what skills they're looking at, they look at the scope and sequence for the year-long course of study and say, what is the expectation for this point in the year? Is it a skill that is expected to be mastered, or is it something that's just introduced and they're revisiting, but, they won't master it for another 2 months, or be expected to master it?
And if I could also add?
Sure.
And/or is there a curricular change that needs to be made in the scope and sequence and move a unit of study to an earlier time or something like that? So then those considerations happen too, which is why we have teachers writing and revisiting curriculum all the time because of that.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Baskin? Probably my eyes. Algebra 1 could you tell me on the horizontal bar graph, for lack of a better word, 13% represents what? I don't know if it's another yellow number that I can't see there. On the graph itself, not the numbers that are below the graph. 13, 58, 15,
Okay, so it's
13.
13%, 58%, 15%, 13%.
And what do those numbers represent?
Okay, so we have yeah.
So if you recall that that first slide that Mr. Doxa had with the green, the orange, and the yellow and orange, we kind of combined those things. So for example, anything in the red would be the not meeting group. I know it's hard to decipher the colors up there. The next bar, that 13%, would be our partially meeting.
So that your 13 plus your 1, I suppose,
Yes,
is your 14.
is how we got
Okay.
to that 14,
Right.
yeah. So we just tried to combine it. And the approaching is the middle, which is 58. And then our bubble, meeting, and exceeding would be that last number in green.
Thank you.
Okay. And Ms. Palacastro is going to talk to us. So not only are the teachers working alongside, their teams and unpacking this data in their classrooms, but we've also, we have some initiatives, some work in place that Ms. Palacastro is going to talk about that recently started at the elementary level.
So I just wanted to walk you through a comprehensive needs assessment that we just recently did. We hired a woman named Carrie Clark. She's the Director of Education Services at Windsor Learning. She had the opportunity to come to district for 2 days, and I want to walk you through the process. So over those 2 days, she met with our administration team. She worked with our TIPS teachers, the school counselors, the math specialists, and the LDTC. And during that time, she had the opportunity to hear what we're currently doing with our students with the intervention process. After that, she had the opportunity to go into the classrooms and do some observations. She was able to observe the teachers and the students in their daily instruction. It gave her an opportunity to get a glimpse at our learning in each building. Then she actually had an opportunity to review the data that we just presented to you so that she could formulate some feedback for us. So what did she find? Well, it's very exciting what she found. She found that we are a supportive community. She also found that we have strong, dedicated teachers who are leaders and facilitators in our classrooms. She found that the motivation was evident in our students and in our teachers. She found engaging learning environments where the students were active participants and learning and respecting their peers and their teachers. Then she also realized that we were rolling out core programs, and that was being supported through our benchmark assessments. So with that, we were very excited, but we wanted to know what was next. So our next steps are, we want to continue what we're doing, but we want to refine some things. So first, we would like to refine the existing RTI and the MTSS framework, and we want to clearly redefine our 3 tiers.
I just want to pause you right
Yeah,
there.
can
I
you
don't mean to
define
cut you
those?
off.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So RTI is, we've been using that term for years now, and it stands for Response to Intervention. New Jersey refers to it as, you may hear NJTSS, New Jersey Tiered System of Supports, or MTSS, a multi-tiered system of supports. And it's a framework for providing interventions and responding to students' individualized learning needs. So we think of the first level, if you're looking at like a pyramid, kind of like the one that we saw earlier, the bottom would be our tier 1. That is our core programming. Those are our research or evidence-based programs and the learning that is reaching every student in the classroom. Tier 2 is a smaller population as you move up that pyramid, and it's more targeted supports. So in the elementary school, well, actually in all of our schools now, we have academic supports. In K through 5, it's referred to as TIPS, and those supports also continue 6 through 12 now. And that's when teachers are working in small groups with kids, targeting specific skills and strategies. And then Tier 3 is your smallest part of the triangle, smallest population of students who are requiring the most intensive supports. Usually at Tier 3, you're looking at more individualized instruction, one-on-one. Maybe there are some changes to the frequency or duration, but it's really unique to each child because it's what each child might need. Sorry, go ahead.
So that, we would like to work on refining that existing intervention, and then we would like to continue to train our teachers. We would like to have them work on honing in more on the data analysis, continue to strengthen their best instructional practices and the delivery of Tier 1 intervention. Then we would also like to work with our TIPS teachers and continue to work with them on delivering Tier 2 intervention and work on progress monitoring. And then we would also like to just continue what we are doing right now, which is targeted and small group instruction with a clear focus on skills and strategies that the students need, some more support on. And then the next slide, Ms. Odaska will share with you a small clip from a first grade classroom that is modeling what small group instruction looks like.
So we thought it was important, excuse me, I just have to get the mouse, to show you, we have all of this data, we look at all of these numbers, we look at topics, we look at skills, we look at concepts, and how does that actually translate to what we're seeing in the classroom? So here's just a small sample of a small group lesson in a first grade classroom. Oh.
Okay. Last night I was reading a book called Barrack, you don't have to be doing more books too. This really was a lot of element work. Yes. And I realized, what is an element word? What does that remind you of? What's an element word? Two or more talking vowels, right? And you have seen a lot of those long words in your books. So I was seeing small language words last night, and I needed a little help. I was trying to get all the sounds, the blend, the diagram, the accuracies, trying to get all the sounds to help me figure out those tricky words. So one of the exercises that I found in my book is this. So I think this said that, there, that's a long word. So I needed to break that word up into syllables and try to figure out what that said. So I was looking at it, and I said, okay, let's figure out this part. What's that part say, Oriana? Have. Okay, that's like so easy. Oh, wait a minute. And I see a part, another part in here that I already know. So let's see if we can figure that out together. Have it at. Have it at. Let's see if that would make sense. Can you do this with me? That's their habitat.
That's, if you know her, Miss Barrack, one of our rock star teachers in first grade at Gibbs. So here, Miss Farrier is working with a small group of kids on breaking apart a word in order to decode it. Might not be something that all of the students in the classroom need, but based on, the assessments, either whether it be Ames Web or running records, this was something that she identified some students may need more support in. So we typically see teachers meeting throughout the day, working with different students on different skills across all grade levels. Ms. Policastro mentioned earlier that we are looking to further our work and train teachers in Tier 1 interventions. That would be this. So it's the supports that are in our general program that are reaching all of our students. how are we helping all of the students in the regular classroom setting meet those end of grade expectations? Something else that I wanted to mention, way back when we were talking about SR2, which was the second pool of funding in response to COVID, some of those funds were earmarked or districts were required to use on multi-tiered system of supports work. So that is how we brought in this consultant who was able to do the comprehensive needs assessment, spending a day in each building, making, sharing her findings with us and helping develop a plan of action that we're looking forward to also utilize some more of those ESSER funds on following through with some of the recommendations that she made.
Could I add something to
Sure.
that? So if you take a look at what Ms. Farrier has behind her, you see the blue sheet with the pockets. So those tools there are part of our Project READ, which is our K-2 phonics program. So she is using a district-approved program. She also said a few other things that are very specific to Project READ. She talked about syllabication with talking vowels, which is something actually I learned as a student. Because when I was a child and they say how many syllables are in the word, you would like clap and go like this, and I would always get it wrong. Well, Project READ really simplifies that, and they say, well, how many talking vowels are in the word? The students know what a vowel is by the time they get to second grade or first grade. So if you look at all the vowels and then see which ones talk, you will know how many syllables a word has. Something I learned during the training process. And something else that we are doing, so she also talked about elephant words, which are larger words that they can break apart into sounds. And we also, with the funding, we're doing Project READ training at the end of June for all teachers in K through 3, so that any new teachers who did not have the opportunity to go through the full training, and anybody who did it years ago, 5-6 years ago, all teachers will have the opportunity to go through the formal training and make sure that what we're doing is consistent among all classrooms at each grade level, so that we can ensure that when Ms. Farrier's students go off to the next teacher, that teacher can be sure of what those students learned before they got to them. So that consistency is very important. So this is, the important piece is that it's all part of a bigger picture. District-approved research-based programs, training for those programs, implementing them with a level of efficacy in the classroom, and then the hope that that's going to result in the growth that we can document with a benchmark. So that's part of what I'm looking at least this year when I'm going into the classrooms, adherence to programs and implementation with a level of efficacy that we need.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I think that concludes our presentation for this evening.
Thank you very much.
Questions?
Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, here Ms. Farrier again.
Frogs. It's frogs.
I didn't even recognize it from the video.
There you go.
Are there any questions or comments for our presenters?
Here, you need to know.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh,
Okay,
okay. We're going to try to shut off the video.
We're ignoring it. I know, that's what she's trying to do. There you go.
Okay.
I didn't know if anybody else did, so.
It's okay, go ahead. Thank you. Chair recognizes Mrs. Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, ladies, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask the question this way. Hopefully you'll hear me.
Yes.
So, really just around that, thank you, by the way. That is definitely a challenge with the color.
My screen turned off and they were kind enough not to tell me that. So I apologize. It was my fault.
Trying to understand so we had the pyramid, but then we had the bars. When I looked, I just took notes to myself that it looked like the ELA overall and the winter assessments were down, generally speaking. That there were not, and I didn't want to interrupt while you were doing it, that it was less in the green, a little more in the red, but it was the big numbers, so I couldn't see how that broke out. And you were saying something about they're assessed in the fall, and then in the winter they're assessed in the same thing. I don't know if it's the same thing though. And I was just wondering about that, if you saw that or what your thought was on that one. And then also similarly with math, it was interesting because I saw 4, 5, 6. Again, it wasn't huge that way, it was just a little bit. But ironically enough, at the high school, they did better in the winter, except in geometry, it was a little tiny bit down, but otherwise better, which typically over the years, we've noticed assessments at the high school, they struggle because the students are different and everything else. So I saw that too, so I don't know if you noticed that. Is it because it's overall for all schools? Is there a breakdown for you to say where that's seen most typically? I know the teachers are doing it in their classrooms. It just didn't, it seemed like it actually came down.
So at the elementary level, literacy, early literacy skills is actually something that was picked up by Carrie Clark as well,
Okay.
and brought to our attention. We have been very focused on math for a number of, I feel like a few years now, we've been presenting and sharing the performance with you. And it has been a district goal, and we put a lot of different pieces into play. So it wasn't surprising, but I know that we've done it and we can do it, and it's just kind of getting back there and establishing, working so that we're creating a better balance between both of the content areas. Even though we did speak about the Project Read training, which will take place for the elementary teachers in their early literacy skills, and the comprehensive needs assessment that took place in K-5, we're also doing work 6 through 12 as well. So you mentioned high school math. Our high school math is working with a representative from Lincoln, who is a former director of curriculum, and not only trains the teachers in the use of their platforms and unpacking those assessments, but is working on unpacking the data so that the teachers can provide these kinds of working one-on-one with kids and working in small groups with the high school students as well. And the ESSER funds are also going towards her working with the high school math team in that data training.
Yeah, I did see that. I just, like I said, normally ELA is the one where we are consistently doing well, the students do well. And so I just noticed how that dip happened in the winter. I don't know if there's any idea in terms of addressing that, so.
So moving forward, we're revisiting the curricular calendars,
Okay.
right? A lot of our units of study now, we transitioned to balanced literacy upon my arrival in the district. And over time, a lot of those units of study have taken on a more homegrown spin. So we are looking back to the Teachers College suggested curricular calendar. We're going to be looking at them this spring, tightening them up for next school year. So I'm confident that, math really is the challenge for us, because we often find ourselves trying to do different things. What if we tweak this, or can we look at maybe our pacing, or change the way maybe we're teaching things? And I think that has been more of a challenge for us. English language arts, not so much, but I think maybe that's a reflection of us being so focused on our math interventions.
I also think too that what we have available to us that we don't share with the public is the fact that we can look by teacher.
Right.
So if we see that there's a teacher who needs support in an area, we can definitely identify that teacher and then support them. Or if we see a teacher whose students are all not grasping a certain concept, we can say, was this taught when it was supposed to be taught? Are your plans in line with the pacing? Are you behind? Do you need help? And it is very important. I very much believe that teachers are artists, and I value their craft, and you can go from one classroom to the next and see how they each bring it to life differently. But, as a former curriculum person, I firmly believe that we need to be teaching district-approved programs and making sure that everything we do is aligned to the curriculum, and that the tools that we use are research-based, and that we are not supplementing without approval, authorization, because if you need to supplement with something and it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, then why are you keeping it to yourself? So then everybody should be doing it, right? And that's really important. And, you look at things like, for example, I'll just give you, and the pandemic, I hate to blame everything on the pandemic, but I will give you a real life scenario. So before the pandemic, we're in 2020 and everybody's using readers and writers notebooks, marble notebooks, right? So you have a third grader, a fourth grader, really dipping into the reading notebook, writing notebook, they're tabbing it, they have beautiful anchor charts, and they're in, and they use them, and they hold on to these things. I know this because my daughter did it too in elementary school and middle school. Well, in 2020, when we went remote, what do you do with a marble notebook? I'm not going to see you, right? So now we quickly switched to Google Classroom out of necessity, and we had to essentially abandon that work that we were doing, that was real, that was hands-on, that was practical, and shift it to a digital platform. So much so that the Teachers College scrambled like lunatics to give us digital units of study so that things could translate into the digital world. Well, in reality, third grader needs a marble notebook. I mean, and so therefore now we're transitioning back to that hands-on math manipulative thing, inquiry-based science labs, and a marble notebook with Post-its. And, when they're little, it's a little bit different. But that adherence to the program has sort of gotten lost in the shuffle to no fault of anybody, just trying to survive the shift in the teaching. And so I think, kind of getting back to our roots is very, very important. And we have great programs here, and we have great benchmarks, and we have great supervision, and we've hired wonderful professional developers, and I think we have, and I'm glad to hear that. That was the first I was hearing of the summary report from, what's her name? Carrie. I should know that, we have two Carries. That was the first I heard all of those things, and I'm glad that she said them, because those were all things that, we recognize, the motivation level of the students and the teachers and the team, and the supportive, nurturing environment. It does help to feel like you work in an environment where you can try things and you can, so that was very refreshing.
A little fun fact.
I do want to preface all, or kind of go back on that, not preface it, but say back and say, none of those numbers I looked at and went, oh my gosh. I know that it's something that we've always been so strong in, so that's really
and I do think that that's partly to blame. It's it's not an excuse, but it's a reason, I think. So that's part of it, getting back to really how kids learn best. And we know it's in the classroom, and it's with the teacher, and it's hands-on, and full body. We know all that. So hopefully it'll be a blip, as we move forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? John, go ahead. Chair recognizes.
So part of the next steps path forward was, which I think is very important, is sort of training on analyzing the data for the teachers and the faculty. Where does that training come from? Like, who is doing that?
So we're actually going to be working with Carrie Clark. And the fun fact I was going to share, when I was teaching, she had trained me. So I was part of that level, like the Tier 1 interventions as a classroom teacher. I learned how to give each child essentially what they needed through that small group work. And I'm confident that she'll be able to do the same for us here.
And is she primarily English language arts or
She does both.
She's doing both, okay.
And currently, currently what we're doing with the data is teachers have worked with Shana, they've worked with the building administrators, we have team meetings, they collaborate. They recently just had a meeting where they looked at the data and then they talked about things that maybe that someone else might have been successful with and what are you doing. So kind of collaborating, sharing ideas, creating small groups and targeting. So we are starting the work and then we hope that when Carrie comes in, she can just come in and dig a little bit deeper with us.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Sorry about the colors.
I do have a question, but it's not for them, if that's okay.
Is it regarding?
Yeah, it's regarding that.
Regarding this?
Yeah, really
Okay,
quick
go
one,
ahead.
because I forgot that. So I did notice a couple of things. What can the board do, right? So you look and see what can the board do. And I noticed that in there, that Carrie had mentioned, and we had written down, I wrote support for TIPS teachers.
Uh-huh.
So is the support for TIPS teachers and other things part of this ESSER too, like that, what's in there? You know, in terms of, or is there a thought to come later? Because I know a lot, we're trying to use as much as we can out of that ESSER funding to get as much as we can out of it. So I just was wondering if this kind of all falls under there and it's not additional coming.
I think it's really important to keep in mind the fact that the tier 1 happens in the classroom.
Yep.
Right? So I think that for some people might be a shift because, you know, you're thinking, well, I'm teaching everything to this group and assuming that everybody here can get this group, get this. But when we talk about strategy work, which I learned so much from Lauren and then and you can correct me if I'm when we talk about strategy work, we're talking about teachers really utilizing centers. And that's what I was thinking when we're watching Miss Farrier. I thought, is everybody wondering where the rest of her kids are right now? How can a teacher possibly do that? Well, that really is what's going on in her classroom because she uses centers. And she does work to empower her students to be independent and working on different things. And maybe a technology center, there may be a math practice center, right? Maybe a listening center all around the room, or they could be engaged in reading, whatever. But this strategy work is critical in the classroom because if not, then we're just saying, well, they need tier 2 and 3, which then puts an undue burden on the TIPS teacher because now she has 150 students on her roster, which is ridiculous and unmanageable and ineffective. But if we work with the individual classroom teachers on, you know, what I call like reading workshop, you know, 201, it's how do you really maximize this strategy work with your students so that you can work with them before they become a tier 2 or a tier 3 teacher. So supporting the TIPS teacher is of course important. However, the true support of the TIPS teacher is by doing strategy work in tier 1. So that you can't just jump everybody who's struggling onto the TIPS teacher, right?
Yeah, and also early identification.
Yeah.
So that the teachers can, you know to identify early when a student has a little gap so that they can address it and not have to wait for more formalized supports.
Right, so, but really what it comes down to, my question is, as a
were talking about
board,
funding
our
source.
support, you know, because we do support the programs, right? So that's what we're supporting. And supporting, you know, bringing someone in to do that and help you with that training, like the question was there. That's what I meant, like, so when we're looking at this, are there things that you're identifying? And it's been able to fall under that
It's
ESSER
falling
right now.
under ESSER.
Excellent.
As well as the data training at the high school.
Great.
You know, we're trying to maximize that funding
And
that's
resources,
available.
so approving resources because, you know, things walk. And a teacher's gone and then you're like, where's the... So making sure that every classroom, and that's one of the things, when you talk about supporting, it's one of the things that the board recently approved, was the learning leaders at the elementary school, well, actually through grade 8, so that those learning leaders by grade and by building, and at the middle school by grade and by content, can identify what the needs are. Just to make sure, because truth be told, if you don't have a great program, and you don't have all the resources and you don't provide them the professional development, you can't in good conscience ask them to do a good job with that. So I know that Lauren just put together a large purchase with ESSER funding to supplement all the resources, so everybody has what they need.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
And so yes, in the checks here somewhere,
Yeah.
you are actually approving that.
Yes.
Chair recognizes Mrs. Calderon.
Just a question. What's the metric you're going to use to determine whether or not an intervention you employ now is successful or, in your words, approaching success? How are we going to know that it's working? I mean, whether we do it in the next assessment or in the next year when we compare the results?
So we have multiple pieces. We have our local benchmark data. We have our classroom assessments. Students who are receiving, you know, more individualized supports or individualized interventions can be progress monitored. We have the standardized testing data, which we are resuming come spring. The last one that we have is from 2019. That's why we have that start strong, and we really couldn't draw those comparisons. So it's a combination of standardized testing data, local data,
Running records.
running records, classroom assessments, end of course assessments, and the progress monitoring piece, which is more individualized and specific to each child.
Are there any assessments, are those primarily assessments of the students as far as their success, as far as grasping, some of these changes? Or are any of those assessments of, whether or not we're properly supporting the staff, supporting the teachers to help, to kind of maybe, you've identified ones that maybe need more support. Are any of those assessments going to show us that?
I do think that there's definitely validity to the link it and being able to identify it by teacher. And then once you identify it by teacher and you look very closely at the data from the students, you will know whether or not a large majority of the students are not getting this skill or that skill. Is it just in general across the board? If you see it's in general across the board, then you're going to really target the instruction.
We also have our classroom walkthroughs and about formal evaluations. Teachers have professional development plans.
Lesson plans?
With Achieve NJ, we have our MSGPs.
There was no questions and then a bunch. Are there any other questions from the board members? Okay, at this point, we will move on to our Superintendent of School report, Danielle Shanley.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so tonight I'm just going to report out some required things to you and some agenda item things to you. And then I'll do my good news report tomorrow. Tonight you get the bad, no. Okay, so let's see. I need to first present the January HIV report. So we had 2 incidents at David E. Owens, both of which are unfounded cases of HIV. For record-keeping purposes, tracking number 226-805, 226-805, unfounded, and 227-584, unfounded, for HIB, were addressed as student code of conduct. Then we have our revised suspension report. Apparently there was an error on the October suspension report, and we need to re-report it. We had 2 incidents. This is very difficult to read. I'm sorry. 5 incidents issued in the month of October. 2 were inappropriate conduct. 2 were for fighting. 1 was a response of confirmed HIB. And all of them were in-school suspensions with an educational and therapeutic component. Okay. There were none others? Amen. Okay. On the calendar,
Nothing for January, though.
yeah, that was it? Okay, on the calendar, you will see, actually on our agenda, I'm asking the board to revisit the 2022-2023 school calendar. I would just like to explain to the public why we're making the change. The first change in the calendar will be to close schools on election day. You know, we've had some history of parents being concerned about school security on election day, people coming in and out. We have no control over where those elections take place, which doors people have to come in and out of. Parents get very frustrated by that, understandably so. So why don't we just close on election day and not have to worry? That makes everybody rest a little bit more easy. So we are closing on Tuesday, November 8th. That means that we have to move the evening elementary school conferences to Monday the 7th. And Wednesday the 9th will also be elementary school conferences, but the evening conferences will be the 7th. So that is reflected in the new calendar. So now we close on the 8th. I need to find a day. I need to make up a day somewhere in the calendar. So I looked at Friday, February 17th, which originally we were off. But if we make that a single session day, we still have the long weekend, and we regain a day back, officially a day, because a single session day does count as a day. And then the other change, Mr. Dalala has requested that middle school graduation or middle school commencement take place on the morning of the high school commencement, graduation, because that is, it's worked the past 2 years, and he would like to stick with that, and I'm fine with that. So we just changed that on the calendar. And so that's what that is. And as far as reporting goes, I think that is it for this evening, and I will share good, fun news tomorrow.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay. We have our business administrator, no, I'm sorry, we have our assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction report, Lauren Odapska.
Okay, I'm gonna balance it out, like I was talking about before, and give my report tonight.
There you go.
I don't have fun news, but I have important news for you. So, NJ QSAC, New Jersey Quality Single Accountability Continuum. NJ QSAC is the Department of Education's monitoring and district self-evaluation system for public school districts. The system shifts the monitoring and evaluation focus from compliance to assistance, capacity building, and improvement. It's a single comprehensive accountability system that consolidates and incorporates the monitoring requirements of applicable state laws and programs and complements federally required improvements. The monitoring and evaluating of school districts takes place in 5 key areas or components or factors in effective school districts. And the components are instruction and program, fiscal, governance, operations, and personnel. Our QSAC review in instruction and program is scheduled for Friday, March 4th. At that time, our county ed specialist will review K-12 curriculum, student proficiency, and student growth scores based on state assessments going back to 2018-19. As I mentioned, the 2019 was our last formal NJ-SLA testing year. Professional development, ongoing articulation, tiered supports, our INRS framework, which is intervention and referral services. More information will be shared with you following our visit, but that's a date that we are currently preparing for and working with our administrative team on. I wanted to talk a little bit about the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment, or the NJGPA. I mentioned this maybe back in September or August when we were talking about upcoming assessments, but this assessment is new. On September 8th, 2021, the State Board of Education adopted graduation assessment requirements for the classes of 23, 24, and 25. The new regulations comply with state statute and establish as one pathway for graduation, achieving a graduation ready cut score on the English language arts and mathematics components of the NJGPA. So this year's juniors will be tested in March because they will be the first graduating class next year, class of 23, who will need to meet these requirements for graduation. The ELA component of the NJGPA is aligned to the grade 10 ELA, New Jersey Student Learning Standards, and the mathematics component of the assessment is aligned to the NJ Student Learning Standards for Algebra 1 and Geometry. For those students not meeting proficiency on this assessment, there are alternate pathways. The NJGPA testing will take place at NMHS March 14th through the 18th, with makeups the following week. So that is up and coming. That assessment will be in March, and then we will have the New Jersey Student Learning Assessment. Getting back to that, and I'll have more information to share in one of our future meetings. In addition to the project retraining that we're offering in June for K-3 teachers, we also have planned some responsive classroom institutes. Our responsive classroom institutes with formal training made possible through the use of ESSER funds are now underway. Responsive classroom is a student-centered social and emotional learning approach to teaching and discipline. It is comprised of a set of research and evidence-based practices to create safe, engaging, and happy learning spaces and school communities for both teachers and students. K-8 teachers and administrators participated in a full day of training on Thursday, February 10th, last Thursday, and we have 2 additional days of training planned in March and May. Responsive classroom, as you know, I feel like we've been talking about this for years, is a philosophy that we embraced for some time. However, we never had the opportunity to engage in the formal training. The institutes are, there's a cost there, but through utilizing the ESSER funds, we're able to plan 3 institutes this year and additional institutes to train more teachers next year.
We did not have the funding previously,
Prior
so that's
to the
important.
ESSER funds, yeah. And then just a note, C30 on the agenda, approval of the English language learners 3-year plan for 21 through 24. Every 3 years, we must submit a plan describing our district's program for English language learners. The plan is an opportunity to review the academic needs of our English language learners, or ELLs, and the type of language assessment program and environment that would best address those needs. Our ELLs are held to the same rigorous standard-based curricula and high-stakes assessments as their English proficient peers as they are acquiring the English language. So in developing the program plan, we keep in mind the cultural challenges that students face with acquiring a new language, and we design a program that provides the language, foundational, and grade level skills that our students need to successfully learn alongside their peers, their English proficient peers. The 21-22, or this school year, is the beginning of a new 3-year cycle, ending in the spring of 24. The plan format has changed. Typically, we would share with you a paper plan that the board would review and approve. They've changed the paper submission to submission by way of Microsoft Forms. So this year, I will be completing the plan electronically and uploading board-approved minutes of the plan to homeroom. I'm just realizing that I forgot to bring the plan up here tonight. It's on my desk, but I will share it with you tomorrow. I have a copy that I can send around. It's about 93 to 98 questions, everything from the number of certified teachers that we have in the district, the supports that we have available for our English language learners, the total enrollment. It kind of runs all over the place. If you can imagine, but
Time spent with the students, and professional development, all that. And you couldn't upload it until the board approved it, so it's like you don't have a finished.
No, so
Right.
you have to go into the platform and start to finish it, so I put it into a Google Doc to complete it so that we have it, so I could share. You can review, and then we can do the minutes. I can probably even share that electronically as well.
Sure.
And that concludes my report for tonight.
Thank you. The only question I had was on the ELL program, but I suppose, I was just curious, off the top of your head, I think the percentage of the amount of ELL students we have has grown significantly in the 3 years. So obviously, things like staffing and what you just mentioned has changed. Has the program itself changed? Like, obviously you don't have it in front of you, but are there any drastic changes? Like, we just talked about big changes we're doing for math and English across the board. What about the ELL program? Are there any major changes to that program, or have you seen needs besides supporting the fact that we have more?
Yeah, so for the last few years, the population, our English language learning population has significantly increased, but most recently, it's kind of slowed a bit. For students who speak, if you have 20 or more students who speak one language, you're required to offer what's known as high-intensity ELL. So, for example, we have more than 20 Spanish-speaking students in the district. However, they're spanning grades K through 12. So, in a perfect world, they would all be in one grade, and then you could offer like a bilingual class. Because we have, compared to other districts where that is the case, and you have, more than 20 on one grade level, we offer high-intensity ELL, so those students are receiving 2 support periods as part of the regular program.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Baxter. Now we have our business administrator report when she takes off her board secretary hat. Dr. Kuchar.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to start with F-151, which is the award of the construction bid. Just to give you some information on that, that lowest bidder came in $13,000 under budget with total construction cost of $241,000. The second lowest bidder on that was $258,600. We had 7 contractors pick up the bid and 6 bid. So after the attorney review, everything was submitted, and so we were able to award the bid to the lowest bidder. Currently, the bids have been coming in a little bit higher than budgeted due to the current climate in construction and materials. So we were fortunate enough to receive this bid under budget. I'm also working on putting together a food services bid because that contract is up, so we'll have to be going out to bid for food services. That will be upcoming. As far as budgeting, the state budget address was scheduled for February 22nd, and which would have given us our state aid numbers by February 24th. However, this has now been pushed back, and the governor will not provide the address until March 8th, leaving all districts in a bit of a holding pattern right now, waiting for those state aid numbers. So right now we'll budget flat and go from there. And then we're continuing to work on the LRFP, which is the long-range facility plan. I would expect to have something to you by the next meeting for approval, so we could submit that to the state. Obviously, the buildings, this is a comprehensive plan of all facility projects that we have to do throughout all buildings. So we're working on including all the projects and having that submitted to the Department of Ed. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. In that case, agenda items for discussion. Review of board action. So, John, since you just started with us, we have our work meeting and prior to our regular meeting. So you have the regular meeting, the tentative agenda, and you've reviewed it. So if you have any questions that maybe you might have asked Danielle and she answered me the question, but if you have other questions, now is the time to ask them. So when I say like review of that section, any board member is welcome to speak up and ask a question or ask for clarification or anything like that. So we can get those, either whoever needs to answer them can answer them, or Danielle can get you that answer by the regular when we vote on it.
Okay, great.
Okay? So, agenda items for discussion. Review of board action. Chair recognizes Mrs. Ryan.
So, thank you. On BA80, there was the note that this might be something that was looked to do immediately because there are students interested? Or-
Yes.
Okay.
Families identified that, that's why we're proposing it.
Yes. Okay. And obviously, because NICARE is a self-funded program, that is all set in place and that's all okay.
Correct.
They can
And
it's done.
we have a revised budget
Okay.
under finance as well, which supports that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, they're chomping at the bit to get that morning care, which I can appreciate, you know.
And it's great, we're able to get it up and running quickly.
Yeah.
And I saw one of the attachments had the budget and then the tuition, and
Yeah.
Yep.
so it's great.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions on that? Review of educational program and curriculum. Yes.
I have a question. Well, first of all, there's two C28s. There's the first one for the students who do the independent studies, and then it's the Academy Spring Trip. They both say C28. And the only reason why I noticed it, because I wanted to find out, do we know where the kids are going on their college trip, like which colleges?
Yes, we do.
I have that. Rowan University, University of Delaware, George Washington University, Georgetown University of Maryland. Where do you see two of the same number?
So the
C.
first one
Yep.
here.
C28.
Oh.
Page 2 and page 3.
Wow,
Bob on
okay.
page 2, it's on page
I didn't notice it earlier, just
Okay,
today.
so we will address that and have it renumbered and in red for tomorrow.
Thank you.
So the students,
Chair recognizes Mrs. Ryan.
so the students have the students already expressed their interest because this is coming up pretty quick. All right, March 9th, that's not too long. They're not, are they waiting for our approval? I mean, that's what I'm trying to say, like,
C28 is just a revision, that this young
Yeah.
lady was doing a half of the year and just going to do a full year.
that I'm good.
Which
I'm
one are
talking
you
about
talking
the,
about?
You're
the
talking
second
about the
C28.
field
Second C28, so the parent meeting is, I think, February 23rd.
Okay.
It has been announced to the students because obviously I have to approve it. And so we need time to gather,
Okay.
with the hopes that, of course, the board would support
I
that.
am very much,
Of course.
I'm very much in favor. It is very, very.
It's a great trip, yeah.
College visits are important.
Yeah, it's just very helpful for people to be able to do that.
Was that your only question, Mrs. Ryan?
Is there a cost associated with that for the students?
Do you have the form, Laura? Let me see.
I don't have.
I don't have the form here.
Pull it.
know
I
there
want to
is
say it's
similar-
100, I want to say it's something like $150.
Okay.
Let me just
For
double check.
each student.
Yep, per
Okay.
student. $150 out-of-pocket expense per pupil.
Got it. Thank you.
And it's 2 overnights.
Yeah, and it sounds centralized. right?
Yeah.
So it's down in that South
Yep.
Jersey, DC area.
I have a question, if anyone else, I have a question I didn't think of until just now. The independent studies, will they be giving us presentations at the end as they always have?
Warren?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Well, the
So
independent
in the
studies.
past, the independent
So,
studies, as part
yes, I
of their
think,
passing, they had to present to the board what they learned.
We started doing, I think we shifted to committee,
Mm-hmm.
right? That was like pre-COVID.
My memory is shot from COVID,
I know,
so.
I know. But if I remember correctly, I think it was the presentations, there were so many students taking advantage.
Which is great,
Which
yeah,
is
so now there's a
wonderful.
committee.
So we did it with the committee, and we can definitely resume that. I think we paused it during COVID.
Yeah.
And then last year, yeah, I think it was still kind of that lingering, we weren't meeting in the conference room.
Because of
Mhm.
COVID, yes.
So we can certainly do that.
do committee
Yes.
attendance? Okay. I think the independent studies are great.
It's
And
always
I
exciting to see what they're doing. They're always-
I didn't
Very
realize
creative.
art history and so many were available on, like as an online coursework, so that's great that we can offer that. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? In that case, now we have review of personnel recommendations. Okay. Review of finance. Yes, Chair recognizes Mr. Albert.
F-137, can I get information regarding what type of child study team staffing services are being delivered, and is there any sort of ceiling on the amount of money we're spending?
Anthony, do you mind repeating the number for me?
F-137,
Thank you.
approval of Supreme Consultants LLC.
Got it.
Mr. Albert, I'm gonna get back, can I get back to you on that?
Review of facilities. Okay. Now we are at the portion of the meeting for liaison and board committee reports. Do we have any? Do you have a report for us?
No.
Okay. Councilman, do you have anything for us tonight?
Just briefly, and thank you. Great to see everybody. It's been pretty quiet, so our update is pretty brief. On Thursday, we're going to have the borough's COVID task force meeting to review protocols. And at our next mayor and council meeting, we're going to be announcing events and dates for the 100th anniversary, which we're going to be celebrating throughout the year. And we would like to thank the individual board members who were very kind and are sponsoring a banner for this year. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
And that's my report.
Thank you. I was actually going to mention that tonight, that I just want the public to know that the board is not purchasing a banner out of school funds. We individually are chipped in to purchase the banner ourselves as
Community members.
Yes, as community members on behalf of the board.
And that's how we want to say thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Yeah, you're welcome, of course. It's important. It's a big thing for our town. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Additional board items. I only have one thing, just along with the banner. It's not really board business, but it involves all of us, so the public should know. We are all, as individuals, citizens / board members, petty grants for any community members who may have not been here the night she presented about the burial ground that is on school property that the board is applying for the blue marker for, has asked for any board members as well as community members who are interested. Part of the application includes letters from community members and anyone who would have interest, expressing their interest in getting the blue marker, if they have reasons why it's important. And Hetty Grant is pursuing this as a community member, not as a councilwoman. But if you have letters of interest, a letter that you would like to include in her packet, she's asked that you send that to her by, I think, the end of February, she'd like them by.
Yes, I don't know if this falls under any of the, additional board items.
Go for it, additional board.
Looking at the new calendar, I noticed in the current calendar, there's no date for the moving up ceremony for Berkeley and Gibbs. Do we have a date for that?
We don't typically put it on the district
Calendar.
calendar.
But because the one we approved today has it on there.
Does?
That was the 16th of June. That's what made me think of it, there was not.
We never had it on there.
Yeah, we
Okay.
never had it on.
So it's new.
Okay, fine,
Oh, good.
that's what I was just wondering. And then also this weekend, since it was so nice out, the track, I noticed people had dogs on the football field, and there's no signage saying no pets, even though I'm sure it's understood, but maybe you wanna, there was a person just walking their dog, and, I don't know.
Yeah, it's an ordinance. I mean, there's just no animals on school
So
property.
I guess maybe we just have to state it.
Yeah. Put a sign.
Remind
Like on
people
the
when it's
fence.
locked, maybe that's one of the reasons. Yes. Chair recognizes Mrs. Calderon. Do you have new business, additional board items?
Yes, so this was something I addressed with you guys privately. I know that there's been some concern in the community about, traffic issues at the drop-off and pick-up at the elementary school, middle school. I know the high school has been relatively resolved. Is there anything that, and you don't have to give me an update now, but it's something I just kind of want to put on the board's radar. There are concerns from the, various parents that I've, that I've seen about some dangerous conditions at drop. I mean, we can't stop how people drive, but is there anything that we can do as a board to kind of reduce any sort of, dangerous conditions that are putting our teachers, putting our, and children at risk at, at these, at the pickup and drop-off situation?
I would suggest that these parents who have spoken to you reach out to the school principals first and see if there's anything that can be done at those
Right, I mean, I
schools.
can tell you that they've indicated that they have, which is why, obviously you went through the chain of command, they've indicated that they have, and it doesn't seem that the situation is improving.
I followed up after you communicated that information with me, and I did communicate with all of the principals, and I instructed them to work with their school officers, and if necessary, the New Milford PD, and to make sure that they reminded their parents formally what the protocols are for pickup and drop-off. And I'm certain some of them copied me on those communications. Not all of them copied me, but I don't ask them to copy me on all of their parent communications. I don't micromanage like that. And I don't have 6,000 emails a day. But it's my understanding that they all responded that they were going to address it. So that was, I think, last week.
Yeah.
You reached out to me, and I did follow up with them. And I'm going to, when we don't have an admin meeting this week, but I'm going to follow up with them again on our next meeting and just make sure that that's happening. Mr. Costa brought something to my attention as well at the middle school. So, I mean, we have to keep our kids safe. At the same time, it's a partnership with the parents. We can't have parents dropping kids off in the middle of the street instead of where they're supposed to be dropping them off, shooting out and going around cars. It's a partnership. I'm not blaming any group. We could do better at probably organizing it, and at pickup and drop off, parents can probably do a little bit better in trying to be safe. It's like I could drop you off here because this is quick, but I'm really not supposed to be dropping you off here. So there's that piece too. So we're working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Okay, old business? New business? All right, this is the portion of the meeting where we are open to public for items not on the agenda. Can I get a motion to open to the public? Motion by Nicole Dunn, seconded by Stephanie Coffinger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? As outlined in the Milford Board of Education Bylaw 0167, each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 2 minutes. Do you have any questions or comments from the public? Mrs. Sanjanishi, please state your name and address for the record.
Express a note of gratitude for all that you did to maintain in-person learning, especially after the appreciate it.
Thank you.
2 comments and a question. Comments regarding communication. One, I believe it was in January, the David Gilman's middle school sent a climate survey to parents, and I just think it's an excellent idea. I would suggest that might be something that you think would be implemented throughout the district, because I think the ability of parents, certainly can be adjusted for the different schools and different age levels, but I think the ability of parents to give anonymous feedback, whether it be constructive criticism or positive feedback, which is working great, is wonderful. And secondly, on communication, I express gratitude for what you have done to improve communication this year, the community backpack letters, recording the meetings, monthly letters of the superintendent, and the coffee with the superintendent. I know last year, just by virtue of the fact we couldn't meet in person, it was possible for parents, and necessary, either to participate in a live chat or to submit a question or comment before the meeting. And while it's wonderful that we can meet in person, sometimes parents have other professional or personal conflicts that prevent them from attending a meeting. So I would suggest that maybe maintain one of those 2 options that was there when the meetings were fully remote, whether it be submitting a question beforehand or a live chat. Is it just another way for parents to communicate with the community? And finally, a question just from the Doc, so when you were going over the report, I believe it's the NJSLA, there's an alternative DLM assessment for students for whom that's just not an appropriate assessment. So I was just curious, was there Lincoln or the Ainsworth assessments? Was there any alternative, or, did all students participate in that, or in that assessment?
So, so the New Jersey Student Learning Assessment is a test that is administered to the general education students in the spring of each year. There is an alternate assessment, DLM, Dynamic Learning Maps, for our special education population. The benchmarking that, are you saying like is there an alternative to the?
I was just curious,
So-
in the same way we recognize that the NJSLA just is not
So
appropriate for some
because the students
with
have
something.
IEPs, and Dr. Pro can
Yes.
really speak better to this, every student's plan is so specific with their own learning goals that administering a universal measure and trying to, compare apples to oranges is not best practice. So because there's no special assessment or local benchmark for special education students.
Well, the majority of special education students, though, participate in everything that the general education population participates in. I just want everybody to understand that. So the majority of them do.
Yes,
The
but like the
DLM,
DLM, there's no,
Right.
we don't have a special Ames web
For the DLM, no.
the
no,
special
no,
education
no.
population.
Because the DLM is done one-on-one, it's done with a trained teacher, it's like a portfolio type of a collection of work, and it really is supposed to be less than 1% of your student population. That's how small the group of students is that qualifies for that assessment. But these other benchmarks that we collect, gather, administer, don't have all these options. But students who have IEPs have goals and objectives in their IEPs, and then within their IEP team and their teachers, they're evaluating meeting of those individual goals. And so that's the more important piece for a student with an IEP, is whether or not they're meeting those individualized goals. That there's no benchmark that's going to necessarily do it the way it needs to be done for each child.
I understand. Am I understanding it correctly that the Ames Web and the Lincoln, it was administered to every child
So,
in those grade levels, correct?
I don't necessarily,
so I believe in the fall, it was administered, how about winter?
every
Every
child,
child.
every single child.
Yeah, it's also important to note they're timed measures. So there's no way to provide accommodations on that benchmark assessment. Because fluency is a piece.
However, a student is not penalized in any way for not being able to, the way,
We don't grade them.
We don't grade
They're not
them,
graded,
right.
or weighted in that manner. It's more of a tool, giving us the information to inform our teaching.
Thank you. And I was just
I'm not sure.
curious from the standpoint of
Sure.
how
Thank you, Mrs. Santamichi.
And if I could just add, please feel free to submit any questions that you have to Dr. Kuchar or me or Lauren. If you can attend a meeting and you have a question that you would like to ask, by all means, you can reach out to us at any time. You don't have to wait for a board meeting to ask your questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, I'd like a motion to close to the public. Motion by Joseph Luna, seconded by Anthony Alvaro. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Do we have any board member requests for additional information? Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
To you, to us?
Yes. Chair recognizes Mrs. Ryan.
So, I think it was brought up previously by Mrs. Calderon, and it was just brought up now as a question about asking questions, before a meeting in the interactive way that it was handled during the pandemic, during the time we were fully remote. But I guess maybe more of a statement than anything else. I think our superintendent noted it as well, that people can ask questions at any time. They can reach out to the superintendent to, that point. I think that to get to the root of it, it sounds like what is being requested is a dialogue, not the ability to ask a question. Because the ability to ask a question is available at any time. Just, it's not a question that gets read aloud and then a dialogue happens. So if that is a request, then that is something separate of what we do as a board at a meeting, because we're conducting business here. So if that's something that members of the public wish to be able to do, then maybe that's something you can look at. Because like I said, at a meeting, we're conducting the meeting, and I think questions should be asked of the superintendent, and it go through chain of command. And if something needs to come to the board, then reach out in that way. So I think that the pandemic did a lot of things. It kind of merged a lot of things together. Learning, students at home, now they're in school. I think parents can appreciate one teacher with 20 children, all at different learning levels, managing them now. And I think here, the same thing as well. Within the board, we conduct business. It kind of got squished because we were all face-to-face, and we were all interactive, and there was a lot of answering of questions because people were anxious. Now we're trying to get back to the business of doing the business of the board, but also recognizing that the public got a glimpse in there and kind of had that access, and now they don't want to let go of that access. So instead of having that same access here at a board meeting, find another way to be able to do that. And I know there's the coffee with the superintendent is available there, but if there's just that other way. So
And that's a much
because when I hear
more-
we can't ask questions anymore, I don't believe that's true. It's not true at all, but it's perceived that way because they thought that that's how it should happen. And the board meetings are very different.
So, Mrs. Warren, thank you for clarifying that, because this has come up multiple times, and it's been mentioned, the difference between a meeting in public versus a public meeting. And with the pandemic, everyone everywhere was a little off on everything, just trying to keep above water. Whereas now it's back to business. However, again, communication with the public is necessary, as well as hence the board realized there's no reason we can't live stream for people who can't see here. They should be informed, and that's, still conducting business. But yes, I believe our committees are trying to think of other ways to have other access to communication, as well as the many, many things that our new superintendent has implemented.
Yeah, good. And for those of you who haven't participated in, coffee with the super, even though lots of times we meet at night and no one's drinking coffee because we just want to go to bed. No. But that's a much more informal dialogue, and nobody has to submit questions ahead of time. I open the floor to any questions or concerns anybody has. Sometimes I have the answers at the moment, sometimes I don't, and I will follow up. And I will say that I always, get back to parents, although when the governor made the announcement about the masking, I probably received 35 emails in a 25-hour period. They were all the same question, unmask the children. And about 5 were keep the masks on. I didn't respond to all 35 because my response was then the letter. But other than that, I always respond to parents, and you can call my office.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Aligning what our needs are with what we need to do. Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes Mr. Loonroom. Do you have a request for additional information?
Yeah, well, I'd like to offer a counterpoint to what Ms. Ryan just said. So I get the dialogue portion. This isn't about dialogue, but the public can come here and ask a question. Agreed? So I don't necessarily understand why the public can't email a question in ahead of time. Not to create dialogue, not live stream, not interactive chat, but I guess the message that we're sending is, if you do want your question read aloud, you have to come here and do it, as opposed to giving you an opportunity to do it ahead of time. A lot of parents have multiple things going on, sports, kids, and they can't get here. So if we didn't allow people to ask questions once they get here, then I would completely understand that point. But we're basically saying you have to show up here to ask the question, as opposed to emailing in 3 days in advance. I don't understand that. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Loonroom. Any other board member requests for additional information?
I just
Chair
wanted,
recognizes Mrs. Sherman.
I just wanted to, Mr. Albro, Stephanie, Dr. Kuchar was quick enough to pull the contract regarding the question that you asked with that service. And it appears that this service is for bilingual evaluations. So bilingual psych, educational, speech and language, OT, and then interpreting services, home and bedside bilingual instruction, and transcription. So obviously, we have a need for that, and this contract will provide us with that need that we can't meet in-house. So it should be limited.
All right, at this point, the board is going to go into closed, and we will, when we resume, when we come out of closed, we will not be taking action. Can I get a motion to go into close, please?
Motion.
Motion by Kate Bryan, seconded by Heather Gomez. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're good? Okay. We have just come out of close, and now, look, I'm holding this already. Now we are, can I please get a motion to adjourn? Motion by Nicole Dunn, second by Anthony Alvaro. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. That was a great question.